there are really two basic states of being. You're either in love or you're in fear. And fear, then creates a host of other things like anxiety, depression. It could create anger and apathy and all of these negative emotions, where love puts us in the present moment. It allows us to even be in heart and brain coherence, so that we're in a brainwave state that is more creative. And the only place that we can create from is when we're in the present moment and when we're in the state of love, right?
Welcome back to A Loud Voice for Love. As you know, I'm Carol Mirko, and I can't claim to do this weekly or bi-weekly, but when the spirit hits me, I invite the most amazing guests. And I had the great pleasure of meeting Stasia Jaramillo, and please pronounce it correctly if I totally
Jaramillo.
Jaramillo, sorry. Jaramillo. Um, oh gosh, probably a couple of months ago, and then we got together, and I had to say that you are, a woman after my own heart in following where, what life was directing you to do, right? And so not unlike me, Stasia had a big career, and she found herself moving in a different direction. So she's now a subconscious healing expert, intuitive guide, and founder of creatinghigher.com. She helps high achieving women. So hopefully you ladies out there, listen up, break free from the energetic blocks keeping them from their next level. A former corporate high achiever herself, she spent years hiding behind a successful career before discovering her true calling. And boy, can I relate to that. I used to say that it was really easy to hide behind my objectives, right? So that was made it easy to, if I was doing sales, well, I was an A student, so I was just going to do really great at it, right? But it was hiding. Now she's a living testament to her work, using intuition and theta healing to reprogram the subconscious mind and guide others toward a soul-led life of ease and alignment. And I know my listeners are going to really want to hear about theta healing. But before we get there, they want to hear about you and from you, and also, as we all recall, this is a loud voice for love. So today we're going to amplify how Stasia is bringing this work, her soul call, into the world as her love language, and we're just going to help amplify it out into the world. So welcome, Stasia.
Carol, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to meet you a few months ago, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Love it. Love it. So tell us about your journey, because I think people, think they're stuck, right? I mean, so you help people get unstuck. But the thing is, like, you were stuck, and then you didn't immediately jump into this new career. You started learning it, right? And doing it. And so let I want to, and then, you know, tell me whatever comes to mind too, because it's about love, right? This is about your love language. So
Oh, absolutely. So I would say I've been into the world of spirituality for about a decade now. And for a long time, as you said from my bio, that I was hiding behind my corporate career, but I was also in a lot of ways hiding behind the spiritual work. Like I was doing all the inner growth work and the podcasts and like reading all the books and, got Reiki certified and amongst other things. But in a big way, I was still hiding, right? And so I felt like I was like, yeah, I'm learning, I'm getting there, but I wasn't actually doing. And I know that there was more of me that I wanted to share. Like I was very intuitive, I was very spiritual, and there was more that I wanted to share. And for a long time, I thought, if only I just made X amount of money in my corporate job, or like when I start making more money, if I get to this level, then it'd be easier to, pivot. But then I got all those things and I was still kind of in the same spot, but now just feeling a lot less aligned because I was getting almost resentful, I want to say, because I was like, I am spending all of this time, in my corporate role. And I know that my soul was just like itching for more, itching to come out. And so the technique that I practice today is called Theta Healing, and I came across it a number of years ago now. And I remember after my first, about 2 years ago, and I remember after from my first session, I just felt so seen by this practitioner who'd never met me. And she was speaking these belief clearings, and I was like, they're resonating so much, better than I could articulate myself. And so I was like, I just need to learn this work for myself. And initially it was about, again, like another tool under my tool belt, doing more inner growth, because I was like, great, like, how do I get more of this? But really, it's what honestly worked for me and what got me to that next level. Because in theta healing, it's essentially a meditative technique where I channel from the subconscious mind, like, what is the limiting belief? What is the root cause, like the bottom block of the energetic stagnation? And the assumption is that with every area in our life that, we want to shift, or that where we feel stuck, there's an underlying energy, right? So like our limiting beliefs are rooted in energy. And so with theta healing, it's about reprogramming and clearing those energetic blocks. And so I ended up doing that, for myself and using the tool. And then, since I learned it just over 2 years ago, I there hasn't been a day where I haven't gone up into that like theta healing meditation. And I was just so blown away by it. And then I've seen, the results of it in my own life. And then when I left my corporate role, it's actually due to theta healing that gave me the courage to really pursue this work full time, to finally, step out of being seen, step out of, I call it the spiritual closet. And being like, I had the biggest fear of being seen. I had imposter syndrome. I always felt like a fear of failure. I had to be perfect before I could, put myself out there in the world. And it's really through theta healing that allowed me to uncover some of those energetic blocks underneath that were, playing out from my subconscious mind, and gave me the courage to really pursue this full time, to like stand fully, in my spiritual gifts, and serve clients and help clients now do the same. And like my clients are really what keep me going now too, because seeing their transformations, it just, it amplifies.
Yeah. Yeah. It is amazing how our clients feed us, right? Because, and in fact, recently I've just felt like my clients have been such a beautiful mirror back for me. And also, um, just the way they embrace the work. I
Mm,
I just it gives me like even more dedication to it, right? Like for me to like re-enter again and again and again, right? Because it's just because as you know, I probably believe this is true for you. I mean, healing is not like it's not an end point, right? It's a continuum. Like it's what we do for the rest of our lives because
absolutely.
I think what most people don't really understand is that like the body's always seeking balance, right? But we've created all of these subconscious blocks throughout our life, right, to like protect our tender hearts. And so once they become a habit, it's very even, we're reprogramming and everything, but it's still the body wants to go back, right? Like so,
So
we're
true.
always in this dance of, okay, I'm aware, don't do that, come back, come back to your future self or whatever. So, so let's just I want to unpack a couple of things though, because in your corporate job, the hiding part, right, was um, because your sound were very similar. Like you knew what your objectives were and you could just power through them, right? You can get them done and you were super successful and but inside, right, is where you weren't successful, right? Your inner voice, your just general feeling. And so like when did I know you said, about 12 years, but like you know, I mean, I started feeling dissatisfied with my Wall Street career like the first day of my job, like it was sort of I looked around and I'm like, do I want to be, like I would look at the 30-year-olds like they were old, right? And be like, I couldn't see myself as them, right? And from that moment I knew that, but it took me a long time to leave. Like, but what was it that like brought you to the place where you started the exploration, right? Discovering the tools and
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say it probably took a little bit longer. Like I didn't know like right away because I was always into the spiritual stuff, but for a long time, I just thought those lives could be separate. I was like, great, I can learn this and I could keep studying the spiritual stuff and then I can just go higher and higher in my corporate career and I'll be fine. Like I never thought it would really feel out of alignment for me. And because I had a lot of blocks around imposter syndrome and just kind of needing validation, needing affirmation, to an extent, my corporate career gave me that, right? And so even having overcome some of those blocks through my corporate career, when I was getting the promotions or I was getting validation in the work that I would do, it would kind of serve me to an extent, right? And so it would give me a little bit of confidence. It would do all of that. And it was only until later where I kind of after I thought after I get the confidence, after this, after that, then I could like do what I want kind of thing. But that's where I just recognized that those two paths were kind of not overlapping. You know what I mean? I was getting higher and higher in my corporate role, and I was getting more in tune with my spiritual side, let's call it. But it wasn't merging. It was making me feel like more out of alignment
yeah,
than as opposed to being like, great, I have these two things going for me.
yeah.
And
Well,
so to answer, and I don't know if I answered your question there, but I would say for me, it was kind of towards the very end, when I really started to practicing theta healing, and I recognized the impact it could have and the shifts, like the shifting timelines, as I call it, like the drastic shifts that I was seeing in my own life, where I realized like, okay, corporate is not for me. Like I can't do this for that much longer. And so yeah, and so for me that was the turning point.
yeah, yeah. Well, I love that you got there, right? Because I mean, your love language, your love in the world, maybe I mean, I can't imagine that you weren't lovely in your corporate job, right? Like, and that there wasn't some sort of passion there, at least to start,
Mhm.
and then a passion for excellence, which is I'm sensing with you. So that in and of itself is love, right? Like, so that you show up in that way. But, now move into the space where it's like you're truly operating from your heart and not your brain, not that logical part. Um, but what I picked up on too, and I see this a lot with how we separate ourselves, right? And
Mm.
the work that you do now is about wholeness, right? That we're oneness. We're not separate. So, here it's once again that unconscious belief that the work, life, right? Like they're not the same. It's like, well, how is that even possible? Because like it's our life, right? So they can't be separated. And that's another interesting conditioning that many of us have had, that they're separate and they're not. Like,
I love that so much. I think you said that so well, and I feel like I've come to the similar realization on my own as well, where it's almost silly when people say like work-life balance, because in the end it is all life. So like what is what is this balance? What are you balancing? And work is part of your life, and so it's not it's work-home balance, work something else balance, but yeah, no, that's a beautiful, beautiful reflection.
yeah, and I think it's important to share because I think a lot of people get really caught up in that, and that creates stress, right? It's just like another avenue for stress. And the work that you do is really ultimately for our bodies to live in peace, right? So that they are balanced, that they find their way to balance through the theta healing and your intuitive coaching. And so what does a session look like with you?
Yeah, so in a typical session, basically, a client would come in and they would tell me about what they're going through, whether it's the way I call it is like an area that they, are ready to shift.
Mhm.
And then pretty much within minutes, I tune into their energy and I'll intuitively channel and tell them like the root cause or what as we call it, the bottom belief there. And so our subconscious mind runs 95% of our life on autopilot. And so chances are that, anything you're experiencing in your life today is created by a program in your subconscious mind. And our childhood, especially the ages of 0 to 7, is when a lot of those beliefs are formed, because from the ages of 0 to 7 a child's mind is like a sponge, and it actually majority of that time is spent in the theta brainwave state, where they don't yet have the logic or the discernment to say, no, I don't agree with this, or I don't, resonate with this. And so they just take everything, both, things that are they are told, as well as things that they just pick up energetically from their environment, as fact. And so a lot of, our programming today is based on beliefs and programs that we established as children, And so if we grew up with, families that, I don't know, argued about money, we could have a program that says money separates families, money causes arguments. And so today, our subconscious mind is protecting us from those very things that we consciously want. But it's saying, no, I don't want, my family to celebrate. I don't, or sorry, to separate, or I don't want it to cause arguments. Therefore, please protect me from money. And so essentially in a session, I would, within minutes, just kind of pick up and intuitively channel what that bottom block is. And then there's a thing I do where essentially I just witness that energetic shift. So I would speak the beliefs out and I would say, can we clear X, Y, and Z? Can we, replace that with, download this belief instead? And then I can, like, in my mind's eye, witness the energetic shift. And sometimes I'll pick up on like a stubbornness where it's like, oh, like we want to clear that, but it still felt hard to release. So maybe there's a layer deeper. And it's really incredible because it's just, that's kind of the technique in theta healing, is to be able to like know the questions to ask and understand to interpret energy.
Yeah, yeah, which is really that it's a gift and it's a developed skill, right? It's both,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah. And but it's like anything, the more you do it, the better you become. And the more you experience working with different people, you'll probably see patterns, is my guess. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, to your first point, I mean, it definitely is like it's not just a certification, because even, I got certified in theta healing about 2 years ago, but it really was the daily practice to be able to tap in, to my intuition, to really understand energy, to understand like what am I seeing and what is my own subconscious mind trying to tell me. And with regards to patterns, I absolutely agree with you as well. And you've made a comment earlier today where you said like clients kind of mirror back to us. And I love that so much. I love that reflection. And I feel like that's kind of how I approach even every session I have and with every client, because at the end of the day, like we create our own reality, we create everything in it. And so even the clients that come to me, I was a match to them in one way or another. Like I was an energetic match to the exact clients coming to me. And so I always try to look at it from that perspective, and I see it as like what can I learn from this client? Like what am I, and sometimes it's expansive. Sometimes my clients are like, I'm like already thriving and I just want to get bigger and bigger and I want this and I want that. And I'm like, great, like maybe it's time for me to expand and to like raise my own, horizons, or whatever the area. I always kind of take it with like a critical eye of just understanding, why did I attract this very client? What is this client reflecting back to me?
yeah, beautiful. And I think it's so important in this work, right? To be have that energetic exchange, right? Where you're just you're getting, you're receiving as well. And I think it's really important because I think a lot of energy work could be draining for people because I think they may not be able to, they might be attracting the wrong people. Like, right? Because
Right.
I mean, there are those energy vampires out there, and hopefully we can fire them fast. And but it's, this whole, kind of reciprocal exchange that really happens, and I think that's when the most powerful healings actually occur. Because
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, when I first started my business, I was just kind of like opening my doors and thinking like who needs to be healed, let's call it, or who wants, these shifts. But I've gone more, just discernment in like who I actually love to work with, the type of clients that I know I want to, attract as well and I want to work with. And one of the realizations that I've come to is that, so let me backtrack a little bit. When I first started, and as being an energy healer, I always thought like energy healers, I need like some crazy story to that I healed from trauma. And I didn't really have that, right? And so I realized that I'm like, that's not a negative. Like, that's my own strength because ultimately, what I healed through was like the imposter syndrome, was the fear of being seen. Because I didn't come from trauma, but I admittedly, like, I was thriving in many ways. Like, I had a, successful career. Like, there were a lot of things that I could say that, were going well for me. But there was still like a misalignment within me where I knew I wanted to create more. I knew I wanted to live a more soul aligned life, right?
yeah,
And so that's the healing that I did on myself to then come out on the other end of that. And those are the type of clients that I actually love, working with and that I thrive with, and so and that's what my company is called Create Higher, because it's not about, getting out from the rut and, getting healing from the trauma necessarily. I actually love like empowering women and working with women that, are thriving in many ways, but they just want to up level. They want to like unlock more doors. They want to reach their next level. They want to just like clear whatever, stagnation they have to really soar.
yeah. And I love that you didn't fall into the trap of kind of needing to figure out a trauma to make yourself believable, right? Because I think
Hmm.
too, it seems like, and this is something I observed as a child, that the people who seemed to get the most attention were the ones who spoke their problems, right? Who like brought,
Mm,
and so they were the ones who were like, getting either attention because they were troublemakers, or they were getting attention because they required it through, whatever they were saying. And, I just remember that, like, thinking to myself, you know, how does somebody that doesn't need attention get attention, right? Like, and
mm,
I feel like you're offering that to the person who's I wouldn't say necessarily like 100% balanced, but where like you're like, I'm trying to think of how I would describe you. We're we live in the world with that with no trauma. I mean, or like minimal trauma. And
hmm.
um and I think that shouldn't be like a deficit to the work that we do, right?
Right, right.
I was writing my memoir, and it's like I've taken a few programs and gone to retreats, and you sit, and the people, who like who have had these traumas, like beyond trauma, right? Their writing is brilliant and all this other stuff. And one time I was with the writing teacher, and I just said, "Is it okay that my life was not full of trauma when my books sell?" Like,
I hear you. I hear you. It's a very real thing that I was like, I thought it was like a deficit at a point, and
yeah,
then until I realized that it wasn't. But the truth is, we may have not gone through trauma in the, in the sense that like many people perceive trauma. But, the stuff that I shared about like fear of being seen, like I could not go on camera with my face, like speaking in videos like I do on my Instagram right now, and so like there were real fears, there were real things that I had to work through. It's not that I didn't have anything to work through. And I always believe that like, we're all, you're never dealt something that you can't handle. So like even if you do come from deep trauma, like I truly believe that it is part of your soul's,
yeah,
purpose to overcome that, or you are capable, you are any trauma that you're given, you're also given the tools to overcome it. And so it's really relative, you know? And so when we talk about fear of being seen or imposter syndrome, like that was a lot for me.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
And I often call them baby traumas, not like, because they're, for me, like I realized that I had a rejection story, right? But I didn't even
Mm,
realize it until like I started doing the work, right? All the work. And I was able to, just through meditation and journaling, figure out that it had to do with something that happened when I was like 3 or 4 years old. It's swim lessons. And,
mm,
I was in the pool with all these other kids, and the teacher told me to get out of the pool. But what I didn't realize is that I was the best swimmer. So she took me out because she wanted to focus her time on the other kids. Had that been
mm.
told to me, like I wouldn't have felt that I was rejected in some way, right? And so I thought it was really interesting because I was like, and then I just could give you like a list of rejection story, like because I think then that became, because you said between 1 and 7, right, is when, oh, so I don't belong, right? I don't fit in. I'm not part of a group, right? So it's all rejection, right? So, and then what do you do throughout your life? You develop the strategies, right, to protect your tender heart. So you sort of, I always stayed sort of, kind of as an observer sometimes, as opposed to a
Mm.
participant. And so that's a that's a trauma, right? That's a baby trauma, right? It's not like nothing horrible happened, but somehow that was a defining moment in how I thought I didn't belong.
Absolutely. Love that story so much. And especially love that you actually like realized it and where it came from. Because so often, like I guess like one of the biggest shifts is really the recognition of like where it came from, you know? And I think that's one of the powerful things about theta healing is that it's not just like, oh, let's clear this belief, but it's also the understanding of like where it stemmed from. So your conscious mind can also kind of get on board and be like, yeah, that makes sense. I, experienced that at that time, and I no longer need to like run from that program essentially. And also with rejection, I'm going to share a quick story from one of my clients because this was really interesting too. Is, she came to me and she wanted to work on rejection, basically similar thing. And for her, it was manifesting through like relationships, and she always kind of just felt, rejected. And when I tapped into her subconscious mind and kind of channeled where it came from, and it was from her career actually. So she was a successful entrepreneur, but she had a belief in her subconscious mind that said that she needed rejection in order to succeed. And so in her business, she has, achieved a lot and accomplished a lot, but a lot of that came from um, others like doubting her or even like canceling her as they call it now, and that would fuel her and empower her to do more and to succeed beyond that. And so she carried this belief that she needs rejection in order to succeed, in order to get to the next level, in order to, in the next level after that. And so it was, that belief was actually very much serving her in her career. But when it was because the subconscious belief, like, it was manifesting through both her career and her personal life, it wasn't serving her in her personal life. And that's where she was, experiencing that. And so that's where, I had to like speak out those beliefs and essentially reprogram it and clear it so she could still know how to succeed and how to thrive in her career, but not have that like run the show for her in her personal relationship life.
Yeah. And what a gift you have to give, or to coach, or however you want to. How do you describe theta healing to your clients? So is it
It's
your
like it's energy healing essentially. It's energetic healing, and so it's not really coaching because coaching is usually like multiple sessions, and there are clients that I work with multiple sessions, but it's like bigger shifts, you know what I mean? And so but in a single session, clients definitely feel a shift depending on the focus area that we're working on. But it's energy work, it's energy healing, and The other thing I'll say about it is it also, even though I am the facilitator, so like I am, channeling and interpreting what needs to be cleared and then I'm communicating it, it's ultimately up to my client to, say yes to agree. And so you would consciously agree to it. But I also, it's the openness, right? And so when people are open to the shifts happening, like they see huge shifts because if someone were to come in and they were completely just like not familiar with, energy work or any of that, and they'd be really closed off, like the shift would still work, but their subconscious mind, it protects them, right? And so it would only allow for them to witness the amount of shifts that they're like open to seeing within themselves, if that makes sense. And so like the clients I work with are often just, they're just so excited for the way I call it is taking radical responsibility of your life and just recognizing that you truly create your reality. And that also means that you can recreate it at any given moment, And so when your energy shifts, don't underestimate how quickly your reality can follow.
Mm, that's so profound. And because yeah, I mean, because you're working in the quantum, so and theta is the reprogramming state. So
Hmm.
and that's where what are the spontaneous remissions happen, right? It's sort of when people are in that receiving where the frequency matches, right? Like that feeling in your body is I'm whole and healed, and then somehow you connect with that frequency in the field, and people get spontaneous remissions. It's just so that's this would that be similar to what happens with your clients and shifting and moving out of beliefs and having their lives kind of just immediately get going in that direction?
Yeah, so it's called theta healing because we access the theta brainwave state. And the theta brainwave state is essentially when it's kind of the same state that your brain is in when you're right about to fall asleep, like that liminal state or like a deep state of rest or meditation. And it's also when your subconscious mind is very open, right? It's open to like receiving information and all of that. And so in a typical session, I do walk us both up through that, like it's like a guided meditation essentially to get there.
Oh,
But honestly, for theta healing, it really just matters that I, as the practitioner, am in that state.
wow.
Because it's also when because I essentially speak to you everything and you are consciously aware of, I'll say, oh, can we clear the belief that, X, Y, and Z? Can we, download the belief that, X, Y, and Z? And so, it's really like for your conscious mind to get on board. And the way I like to explain it sometimes is that we are in a constant state of communication, in a constant stream of communication with the universe, right? And we and so it's a matter of which energy is speaking the loudest. So in my, earlier example about like the money separates families, is it I want more money or is it please protect me from money because I want my family or I don't want it to separate families, right? And so when you have those like opposing beliefs, the universe responds to whatever energy of yours is speaking louder. Like, give me the thing I want or protect me from the thing that I want, right? And so when we through theta healing, when I'm able to articulate the bottom belief, like the true root cause, there is no opposing force, right? It's the bottom belief. So if we say, hey, can we clear the belief that money separates families, for example, right? There's no opposition to that. It just becomes the bottom belief. And so it also becomes easier for you to then energetically align with that and say, yes, I want to clear that. And then because there's no opposing forces, it's like that's what the universe is responding to, and it clears that.
That's it's really powerful and so beautiful. I may want a session with you around money. Because I definitely have like an a limit, right? Where it's sort of like I think, okay, now I'm there, and it's like, like, and so it's just fascinating, and I journal about it a lot, and I really, because obviously I do different but similar work. and healed my eyes through the work that I do. But um I think, there are no accidents too. It's like, why do we know each other? Why are we on this call today? Why are we having this talk? But also what I was thinking when you were speaking though is, how this is a loud voice for love. And it's just like any time that you could kind of clear these baseline beliefs that are in the way for somebody to like prosper or to thrive, right, is only going to be good for the world, for the whole, because
Mhm.
as we move up the emotional frequency scale, I think, I don't know if we talked about, have you read Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins?
I haven't, no.
Was a medical doctor, but he became fascinated in frequency of emotions. And so he decided that he spent 30 years mapping consciousness. And
Mm,
he used muscle testing using the scientific method of inquiry to test all kinds of careers and music and all this stuff. But he ultimately was able to create like a logarithmic scale of emotional states, with shame being the lowest and enlightenment being the highest. But as you move up the scale, I think when you got to courage, you were more likely to then, begin to move, towards the high frequency vibrations than, below, which was, anger and, all that other,
mm.
fear. Um, and so when he wrote the book in 2009, and I may, be wrong about this number, but that he said there were like nine enlightened people, and according to his methodology, that one enlightened person offsets 70 million people in low frequency vibrations.
Wow, that's powerful.
Super powerful. But what's also interesting is if we could just help our clients, our friends, our family, whatever, just move up, right?
Hmm.
Means every little bit we move up in the emotional frequency, um, we will have an exponential impact. Not obviously because we're far from enlightened, but like not at the scale as the Dalai Lama, right? But in our own way, we then pulsate our frequency to maybe 100 people or 200 or 1,000 or whatever, and that, I believe, is what is love is all about in shifting consciousness, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, no, and really like that, like when we do energy work on ourselves, like when we up level our own energy and our own vibration, it actually impacts others around us, like those in our proximity, like literally through quantum physics, we up level others around us. And so that happens naturally, but especially, when we become more consciously aware of this and we can spread the word and talk about it. And it's really powerful, and it's been proven through science too, like how we affect others around us. And I love what you were saying before, just about when you were talking about like upper limit, and because I think it's so relevant for so many people, and I think that you know for a lot of us, like we do have these upper limits, whether it's with money or something else, where when we reach it, we almost like self-sabotage. And that is our subconscious mind protecting us, because that's literally the primary job of our subconscious mind is to protect us. And so for some people, like using money as an example, for some women, they might feel like if I made X amount of money and I would make more than my husband, that it would, create a bad like dynamic, and you know what I mean? And so then they subconsciously try to keep smaller, or they feel like, if I was successful, then it would then it would compromise my family. I wouldn't be able to spend as much time with my kids, and so often the bottom belief and the root cause goes back to something like, if I had X, what the thing that I want, it would be at the expense of something else.
yeah, interesting. We'll have to talk.
I'd love to.
So how, do you work with clients online, in person, both? What's your, how can people find you? And obviously createhire.com is your website, right?
hmm Yeah, so it's createhire.com. My Instagram is at createhire. And online, I work with clients online. So, on my website or on my Instagram, there's a link to like book a session essentially. And I always just start with like a 1 hour session. And then with some clients, if it's a fit and depending on their goals, I have like availability to work for like longer, kind of more coaching style sessions, if you will. But it really is just like, more depth, I guess, and uncovering more layers and or more areas of your life and kind of over longer periods of time.
Yeah. So, and what about like, were you evolving into doing some group sessions? Like I think you were saying something and I was thinking sort of like you're like the theta healing medium, like
So yeah, so I mean it's really relevant that you're asking too. So I didn't put this out yet, but I do want to start doing some group theta healing sessions and kind of having where it focuses on like micro transformations, and I'd want to cap it at like small groups, like maybe like 10 people, because when I do group theta healings and I channel for the group, like I intend that, it lands like the most that it can for that amount of people. But also that's where like when we focus on micro transformation, so say if it's like scarcity mindset or like a fear of being seen or whatever the transformation is, then there becomes a focus point. But then it also, when I put out the intention when I'm channeling to impact, like to land as, as like as much as it can for that number of people, it's that much more impactful with a smaller group. But actually, I just this past Saturday, so literally like 3, 4 days ago, um, I did my first speaking event. So I spoke at, thank you. No, and so I spoke at a beautiful, like retreat style event. There were about 50 or so women there. And after speaking, I did a group theta healing on that large group of women. And so that was incredible because so many of them came up to me after and were like, "Oh my God, I felt like you were just talking to me." And meanwhile, I was thinking, I'm like, are people resonant? I mean, I know that I was channeling, so I was just communicating what I was like interpreting. But a lot of people said that, they felt like I was, speaking directly to them. And then I did a couple of like hot seat style questions where people would just, raise their hand, ask me a specific question about like, hey, I'm going through this. I'm, struggling with money. I'm doing this. And I would, within like 2 minutes or within 30 seconds, I would say like, oh, did this happen in your childhood? And so it was really incredible. Honestly, it was really beautiful because it was the biggest group healing that I've done so far. And it was just incredible to be able to like identify those beliefs and, obviously women that I never met before and goes straight to their like childhood, their deepest, darkest areas of their life. So yeah, more group healings that I am excited to do, just focused on micro transformations in smaller groups.
Well, I think what you're doing is amazing and that you're evolving and and I imagine you're using the work to evolve.
Absolutely. I mean, I recently was like reflecting upon myself, and I was in my corporate career only 5 months ago.
Wow.
So 5 months, it's really not a long time. And mind you, like, yes, I was high achieving and, corporate, but I was so afraid of being seen. I've never made like videos of myself just talking on the camera, and so today I've been, this is the third podcast that I'm recording. I've already spoken at an event. I've attracted the most incredible clients. And so I'm truly, feel like I'm living my soul's work. And I'm, incredibly passionate about this work. And it's like, I'm not only seeing the transformations on my clients, but that's where I like to say, like, I'm truly a living testament of it because my life was, radically different just 5 months ago.
Wow. That's powerful, right? So all of my listeners pay attention to that, right? I mean, we don't need to be stuck. And we certainly don't have to expect that things will take forever. Like I think, and once and again, this goes back to that 95% of who we are by the time we're 35, right? Is just basically a bunch of memorized stuff, right? And so many of those patterns are subconscious, so we don't even know what they are. And it may be that you can't change when you're 40 or I mean, I started doing, I was diagnosed with my eye disease when I was 54, right? So it's like this is like a whole new thing, for me, and you're doing the work, having this podcast, all of the things, right? Um but we can evolve ourselves like every single day. Like every day we wake up, we're a new person.
I mean,
Um
look at you. I was just gonna say, like, look at you. You completely healed your eye disease and through energy work, not through, going
no.
through, hospitals and big pharma. And I really love that you're bringing this point across because say it countless amount of times in my work is that like healing doesn't have to be hard. Change doesn't have to be hard. I would say like the only thing that you need to do is one, take radical responsibility for your life. Recognize that everything in your life you created, the good and the bad, and recognize that, you created everything and not just the parts of it that serve you. Because when you start to get that awareness, when you start to have that understanding, you start to look for ways to understand, okay, like, why would I have created this? What is my subconscious mind protecting me from that it, wants this thing, this very thing in my life that I consciously don't think I want? And then also to just be open, because when you're open to the energy work, when you're open to witnessing the change and like the quick change, like the instant change, then like, then you have no resistance to the change. But absolutely, change doesn't have to be hard.
No, at all. And that's just a reprogramming as well, right? Because it's just I can't tell you, you probably have similar, so many clients are like, but it's so hard. I was like, belief, that's a belief, like hard, get rid of hard out of your vernacular, right? If you say it's hard, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, and the truth is, I don't have many clients like that, and I didn't because I feel like I kind of didn't attract that. But being completely honest here, there was a part of me that was like that. I like when I would see shifts on myself, but for a while, and this is really interesting, is like I kept on seeking that validation from my clients. And it's like, and I have an incredible return like rate where like clients, come back for sessions and that should be the biggest validation. But I was still like wanted those words of affirmation for them to say, oh my God, I experienced these shifts and this is what that looks like. And when I tapped, and this was actually quite recent, but when I tapped into my own subconscious mind and I was like, what, essentially why do I need those words of affirmation? What in me is like blocking that? And there actually was a belief that I had in my own subconscious mind that said, all change leads to hardship. And where it stemmed from was actually in my genetic line. So this wasn't even beliefs that I developed in my own life. It stemmed to my grandma, who's like husband went to war and like that whole thing. And so obviously it was not in my life, but I could see very clearly, and this was easily validated through my mom, that, that is what happened. And it was just this like root belief that says change leads to hardship. And so there was a part of me that was kind of resisting the drastic like change, right? And when I cleared that from my own mind, I kid you not, like the clients, the existing current clients that I was working with, naturally, like three of them were just happened to have sent me voice notes, like literally within the next 2 to 3 days, where it was like, oh, by the way, just like in passing, like, oh, I wanted to share this with you that, I had this cute, huge shift or I had this realization and it was just, very tied back to my work. And I was like, wow, okay, like I was resisting that change. So, yeah, it was also like a really interesting belief because I preach this stuff like I know change can be fast, but it was really interesting to see my own limitations where I was like protecting myself from seeing the hugeness, like the impact of it.
And that's the power of this work, and that's the power of the whole concept of the practices, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, I got to do the work. I'm like, no, 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 you got to do the practices because
Mm.
work still has that four-letter word connotation, right? Like it's sort of it's work, right? Um, But when you practice, it just takes that edge off. And then also that we are constantly evolving. So even, I mean, and I'm curious what you think here. It's like, when I work with my clients, I say it's like, we kind of figure out some beliefs and thoughts that they no longer want, and they work on those and they replace them. But I said, we kind of have like an ascension spiral, right? So we could bump up against that belief or that thought again and again and again. It's just how long are you going to allow it to, like, rule your life, right? Like, and so usually if they're actually doing the practices, they'll bump into it and they'll be like, gotcha, and they like kind
Hmm.
of go through it. And I think we're always in this beautiful dance of ebb and flow, and having somebody like you, we should probably do something together where it's like I'm coaching people to kind of unearth them, and then I can hand them off to you to like have them poof.
Love that. I mean, yeah, so I would say, it's like they say that 50% of the solution is recognizing the problem, right? And so for some people, maybe it is just hearing about that belief and saying, okay, yeah, I'm recognizing this pattern and I no longer want it to rule my life. But I think that's where, like, for some people that's enough, and for some people it's almost like it helps for their conscious mind to get on board when they hear the root of it. Like, oh, it's because of that, in swim lessons where I was rejected or I was told to sit on the side. You know what I mean? And to kind of have that like conscious awareness of like where it came from, not just what the belief was. And so yeah, so I would say like that's why, it's all powerful, right? It's all powerful. It kind of just depends on like what tool do you need or how much depth
Yeah.
do you need.
Yeah. So, so we've been talking for a while. So what I want to ask you one last thing. So what would you like to specifically say to the listeners who are here kind of thinking about this show as a loud voice for love? Like what you're bringing into the world is your version of love. So just in closing, what would you like to say?
Hmm. I would say that if you deep down know that you have that calling for more, listen to that voice, listen to that whisper, because you wouldn't be given the desires, like divinely given, you wouldn't be divinely given the desires that you have if you didn't have everything in you to achieve them, if you weren't capable of achieving them. And so, no dream is too big, and recognize that everyone's dream is different. Um, and I would say really like follow that calling for more.
Mm.
And I'll also end with change doesn't have to be hard, because if you feel like you're still far away from that more, change doesn't have to be hard.
So beautiful, Stasia. And inside and out, you are just a true healer. And I'm sure just anybody listening to this has connected to that energy. So I just so love that our paths have crossed. And I think it's just the beginning. And I'm definitely going to call you about the money.
Oh, Carol, honestly, it was such a pleasure. You are such a beautiful soul. And again, I'm also so grateful that our paths crossed.
So once again, you can reach Stasia at createhigher.com, website and Instagram. And I'm Carol Mirko. This is a loud voice for love, and I'm so happy you, my listeners, have tuned in one more time. So have a great day, everybody.
Raise a loud voice for love. Sky above, stars will guide. Together rise, we can move. Feel the power side by side.